75 foot long with a hero in the seat.
Welcome to another episode of Crazy Canuck Truckin'. This is the second part of the series for the Manitoba Professional Truck Driving Championships. And you know what? Even if you're not part of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, because Saskatchewan can be included in this, I encourage you to listen along because the people that are interviewed are excellent proponents of the trucking industry. They're great representatives for their families, for everybody around. You know, and they have their enthusiasm for their job really comes out. So whether you're in trucking or whatever you're in, this will be a great thing for you to listen to and to think about, and especially if you're in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Get your registrations in. Registrations are due by June 2nd. The competition is June 17th. And it's going to be a great time. The entrant list is growing as we speak. I spoke to Danielle yesterday, and it's going good. So get your name in there and come for a whole day of fun, good food, good times with other drivers in the industry, other people in the industry, whether it's DOT or government officials or the MTA people, the Trucking Association. There's heads of companies coming out. You know, it's a good time. It's a really good blend of getting everybody together and celebrating the professional drivers that are out there. So get your name in, and if you don't want to participate, come on down. Come on down June 17th at the Husky Truck Stop in Headingley, Manitoba. Let's get right into this interview. Have a great day. So I want to welcome another driver to our program discussing the Manitoba Trucking Association Truck Driving Championships. So I want to welcome David to the program. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing very good. Still cold in Manitoba at the time. I can't wait for the trucking championships because it'll be a little warmer, but at the present time, it's pretty cold out here.
It's pretty cool, yeah. So why don't you give us, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where do you drive? Those kind of things.
Basically, started driving heavy equipment, loaders, and that when I was 16. Got my trucker's license from the company that I was driving a loader at many years ago. I don't even remember how many years ago, just to start hauling snow for them. Never dreamed that truck driving would be my career. And about 35 years later, I'm still doing it. And present time, I'm at Bison Transport. Been here, this will be my 23rd year working here. And I've gone from a highway driver to LCVs, and I'm one of the instructor supervisors for the LCV training program we have here. Never in the world did I ever think that I would be passing my knowledge on to other drivers on how to be safe and how to be smart. And that's the hardest part about it. Other than that, I do a Winnipeg to Grenfell, Saskatchewan LCV run 5 days a week right now. A lot of highway drivers, yeah, they go south. They get to see a little bit of warm and sunshine. When you're doing the run that I do, when winter hits, it doesn't end until it actually ends. So you're stuck in it all year round. So it's probably one of the hardest jobs I've actually ever done. Not only because of the time crunch on it, but just the road conditions, the weather conditions, the poor maintenance they do on most of our highways out here. I mean, it's a tough job, and that's what I'm presently doing at the moment.
So for those that don't know, LCVs is long combination vehicles, and that's 253s hooked together, right?
Yeah. Not a good combination when the wind's blowing about 80 kilometers an hour. It has a tendency to blow you around a little bit. So our sailboat's a little bigger than most other trucks.
That's a lot of. I mean, you put your hand out a window of a car when you're driving, and just imagine what it's like when you got 253s, and you got a crosswind. You know, that wind is pretty deadly.
Yeah, like our company of Bison here. I mean, they're awesome in the office. Like, they have the right to decide policy. They never push us. We make 100% of the decisions when it comes to if we take one or if we take two. Most of the time, if we can't do LCVs because of icy roads or poor weather conditions, uh, other companies, they will push their limits. I'm not going to lie to you here. With us, we don't push those limits. We will start shutting our outfit down in that department. Uh, and that's the one thing I love about this company is the right to decide that they have, where they let us make those decisions. It goes a long way, long way.
Every driver has a different comfort level too, so I that's the part that I like about that right to decide. One driver, if I read it right, one driver may say I'm going to go, and the next driver may say no, I'm not going to, and everybody's fine with that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like here, because I mean, sometimes I'll even ask. I say, "Am I the only one not going out today?" And they'll say, "There's about 4 or 5 of you didn't go out, but all the rest went out." I mean, to each their own. I'll even tell my students, if you end up passing me on the road, don't worry about it. Just because I taught you and I'm your supervisor, don't worry about it. I mean, you might have more weight than I do. You're a lot young. I find the older we get, the more cautious we get. Some of the younger drivers that we have, they got a little less worry. Haven't had that scare factor yet. And I find, like, after 30 plus years of driving, it's at the point where, nah, ain't worth it anymore. There's always tomorrow. So that comes into play with a lot of it too. And then some was just financial. Some drivers they got so many bills to pay, they have to go, and it sucks. But unfortunately, hopefully they make it there and they make it back. And like I
Yeah.
said, we have guys that left the other day with the bad weather in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. It took them 2 days to get back. And if they did their research and looked further west before they left Winnipeg, they could have spent 2 days at home instead of on the side of the road. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, like I said, everyone has their own I wouldn't say skill level, their own driving comfort level, like you said. And guys I have guys that drive way faster than I do. They make it back. All good for them. But 2.25 million miles I have of safe driving, and especially in the springtime, the last thing you want to do is have that one boo boo right at the end of winter, because you can never forgive yourself. It's like you made it all winter long, and now you pushed it a little bit, and you're in the ditch, and it's like everything just went downhill from there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another question here that some people ask: can anybody drive an LCV if you have a truck
No,
license?
no. There are stipulations to it. It's usually 2 years driving experience. Some companies, there are some little knickknacks that you can do to have a guy doing it with less than 2 years. Any real company that does LCVs and takes it seriously, you got to have at least 2 years driving experience, and that's not California driving. That's got to be in the prairies, in the mountains, with that type of experience. Our company, we won't have anyone with less than 2 years, and they have to have a perfect driving record. Can't have no tickets, no accidents, no speeding infractions. We really, really, our LCV drivers at our company of Bison, when it comes to all the accident reports we have every year we do a review to all our LCV drivers. And our LCV drivers have less accidents than all the drivers in the entire company.
Yeah.
And we don't have a small fleet anymore. We've got 176 drivers out of Winnipeg, another 100 out of Regina and Saskatoon. We got another 200 in Alberta. So there's almost 400 LCVs between Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, with our company alone on their highways every single day of the week. And when we have less accidents than anyone else. The company loves us because we save it money because we never wreck the stuff. Because we all know if we make a boo-boo with the LCVs, you don't have one trailer smashing into you. You have two trailers smashing into you. And if we run into somebody else, they have no chance. Like two semis coming together is one thing. You get a semi that weighs 137,000 pounds. It's kind of like the Humble bus crash scenario. A Super B
Yeah.
and a bus, Super B one, and that's how the LCVs are. So
There's a sense of pride with being an LCV driver, I think.
there is like when I'm teaching some of my students, like I said, they're all experienced drivers already. But when they're coming on to the LCVs, my main theory with them that I explained to them, I said, you're moving into a category where you're becoming the best of the best now, because everything you have is twice as long, everything you have is twice as heavy. There's just so many scenarios to what you're hauling right now that you just can't make that mistake anymore. Like
Yeah.
there's no sliding off into the ditch. There's no, you got to watch your wind conditions, your weather conditions. Everything is just like doubled up just because of all the extra weight and length that you are. A lot of people don't realize that it doesn't seem long. A lot of my students, when they walk up and down the trailers for the first time in the yard, it doesn't seem like that long. But when they make that first real sharp turn with them and they're going straight with their A box and their B box is still turning the corner, that's usually the moment where their eyes light up and say, holy crow. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to make some. There's a lot of corners that you can make with an LCV that most people are like would have a hard time with a car and an RV behind. You know.
Yeah. When you see a single semi with one trailer, like get hooked up on the corner, and it's a corner that we do with LCVs on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Once again, that comes down to training, right? It's like you got to plan ahead of time. And
Yeah.
usually, when you don't plan ahead of time, you get in trouble. It's kind of like the truck driving championships. Every obstacle we do, if you don't plan it ahead and ace the very beginning of it, you're not going to make it into that section of the course because you already made that. You're already off the track already. So
Let's talk about the truck driving championship. So, how many years have you competed there, roughly?
I believe this will be 7 or 8 years now that I've done it. When I started off, I was in the tandem division. I believe I did that for about 4 years. And this year will be the third year that we're going to do the LCV division.
Yeah. So the LCV division is a fairly new category.
Yeah,
Uh,
we don't have the most competitors. I wish we had more in it. We usually do it at the end of the day because we have to double everything on the track, so it's a little difficult. But as for there's so many LCV drivers out there. I wish that they would join it just to come in and add to the excitement of the competition. Because, like I said, every LCV driver out there, you have skills that are a little. You have to be above and beyond, just because of your length and your size and everything. But yeah, this will be about 7 years now. Company suckered me into it about 7 years ago, and anyone that comes into it for the first time, they're gonna get hooked. You will
yeah.
get hooked right off the get-go. The drivers dealing with the MTO, MTA, the DOT, the RCMP officers. You know, it's an event where it doesn't matter what company you work for. You're becoming friends with other drivers from other companies, and you're spending the whole day with them and the dinners with them, and you're going up against each other. But it's not a company by company thing. It's not even a driver by driver thing anymore. It's more or less, this is a hard competition, and the scores are so close it's ridiculous sometimes. But you never know where you're going to land, because one mistake in one area can have a domino effect into the rest of the competition. So you can ace the driving part of it, which no one really does ever. But if you fail on the written test part of it or the vehicle inspection part of it, all the things kind of combine themselves. So you can ace two, but if you mess up on the third one, that can make or break you when it comes to the finals of it. But the whole like I said, that just being around all the police officers and the DOT and the Manitoba Trucking Association and all the sponsorships, uh, it's a day where you're not worried about looking over your shoulder, waiting to get pulled over by the DOT for something. You're actually shaking their hand, talking to them. They tell you some of the stories that they have seen, and you have a chance to actually ask them questions. So that as a driver, you actually can pass it on to other drivers, and it makes yourself a better thing. And that's what the championships are all about. It's not just the competition, because you never know where you landed until the very end at the dinner when you get the results. Uh, the last 2 years of LCVs, me and the first place winner, I've got second for the last 2 years, and I forget what his name is. We're friends. We see each other once a year at the competition, but his first place and my second place came down to about 5 points, 5 to 10 points. Now in the truck competition, that's half an inch on a tire measurement.
Yeah.
So but we're so close, and it's me and him now with the LCVs basically, because we're so close every year, and it's like I said, it's not just a competition. It's just getting together with drivers where the companies are put aside, and you're all truck drivers.
That's a unique part there where you have all of the different people that we interact with on a daily basis with the police officers and the DOT and the trucking organizations, the bosses at the companies, some of them show up there. We're all there, everybody's there talking together. So that's pretty unique that you have an opportunity to go and talk to DOT about, maybe you've had a question and about something, and you can go and approach them, and it's a very how would you say, there's no confrontation at all. It's just a couple of guys or a couple of ladies or a couple of people just standing chatting, and hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah,
Very
and
low
that
pressure.
yeah, and that happens a lot of times where drivers will ask the DOT officer about certain questions that they've always been unsure about. And if that officer doesn't know, there's always his superior there. So he'll always find the answer for you. And like you said, it's the one time where all your guard is down. You're not worried about if you made a mistake or anything, because you're gonna make mistakes at the truck driving championships. You are. Uh, but just like I said, the common commodity where you're around all the different organizations. I had an electrical cord come out of one of my trailers the other day when it was minus 30. The safety latch broke off it. It's minus 30. None of the electrical cords are stretching at all. So it kind of came out from my B box. It wasn't dragging, but it was there. And the DOT pulled me over. And because of the truck driving championships, he recognized me. I recognized him. And there's no tickets issued because he knows the kind of driver I am. And it's just one of those weird things that, it's just the lid broke off. He came out. So he was just stopping me to let me know that that was going to happen, that was happening. Like 10 miles later, I would have stopped anyways for my inspection. But we ended up sitting on the side of the road for about 30 minutes, just gabbing about general things about trucking.
Yeah.
So, like I said, sometimes being able to meet the people that are there to ensure that everyone's doing their job safely goes a long way. I mean, they're not there to always give you tickets. They're there to help support you and make sure that you're doing everything by the book and everyone else is doing everything by the book.
Yeah. So sometimes drivers can have the attitude that DOT doesn't really know what they're doing. And one thing I find interesting, the DOT does the pre-trip portion, or they do the pre-trip portion of the competition. So
Mhm.
maybe talk about that a little bit.
Usually they'll set up about 5 different defects. Now the defects, you have a list of about 200 defects. of which they can catch you on for points. Sometimes they're easy to find. Sometimes they're not easy to find. Sometimes they'll take a fire extinguisher out of a truck on a proper pre-trip. That's part of your pre-trip, and they'll take it out, or they'll take the flares out of the truck. Now they'll leave the case in there, but they'll take the flares out of your truck. So if you don't actually open the case up, you won't see that they're not there. Now in the real world, if you're using a truck that someone else had and it broke down on the side of the road and the guy took his triangles out, put them on the road, the truck got towed back, you hop in that truck, you're looking at the box of the triangles. Doesn't mean they're there. Tow truck driver might have threw them in his tow truck when that truck got towed in. So little things like that is what they will catch you on. Then there's other stuff where, just fifth wheel not being locked right, landing gear not being all the way up right, a rock in the tires, all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff that drivers will do on a regular basis where we get complacent. And basically what they're doing is they're being a little unique when they do some of their defects. So as a driver, you got to think outside the box of what you normally would do. After you've been driving forever, you get lazy with your pre-trips. When you're there, you better think every little detail that you should be looking at. You better keep that in mind. And that's how the vehicle inspection part goes of it. And it's crazy because you'll find like 7 or 8 items that you'll mention, and yet you still miss one. 1 out of 5 you still miss because it's just something simple. But during a real inspection, that's something that they would have caught.
And in a real inspection, you have to spend X amount of time, 15 to 30 minutes. How much time do you get at the truck driving championships?
There, I believe we got 8 minutes or something like that, 8 or 10 minutes. It's not a lot of time. But once again, if you're doing a proper pre-trip on a regular basis, it shouldn't take you more than 8 minutes, and you're looking at everything in the first place. And that's where a lot of first-time drivers, when they enter the championships, that's where they actually make some mistakes, where they miss stuff, because they're so used to doing a pre-trip on their own truck, which is usually 1/10 of what they should be doing. I mean, every old school guy like myself will say, yeah, we don't do the way we're supposed to. I mean, it's our truck. We know if everything's working right, everything else. And when it's minus 30 out, blow out. I mean, if the tires are rolling, the airbags come up, you're already freezing to death at minus 30. It's a little different than in California where it's like plus 30 and you walk around t-shirts and shorts. So you can take a little more time on this stuff. But basically, a lot of first-time drivers that come into the competition, stuff like that catches them. They don't expect little things, checking in between tires and stuff like that. It's that rhythm that they get out of over time. Every driver gets into that where they know what they're doing, but they get into a rhythm of just an ordinary routine. And that's where the pre-trip inspection part catches you, because stuff you should see is there, but you're not seeing it.
So are you you have a lot of takeaways for your regular life, your everyday going up and down the road? Does this help you in your normal route?
It makes you pay attention more. You're looking at things in the competition. Once you've done that, you discover some of the stuff you missed. Once you get back on the road and you get back to normal life, you tend to pay attention to it more. You look at it more often because it's stuff that caught your attention. When I'm doing PDIC professional driver improvement courses here, I'll do a pre-trip inspection. I'll ask guys certain things. When's the last time you looked at your licensing book? Have you checked to make sure all your permits are properly in your book? Because we've had drivers ourselves that have had permits that have been expired because the permits are sitting on their dispatcher's desk. Now, if it's your own truck, then you can at least once a year look through it. But if you're jumping in different trucks all the time, that is something you need to do. And once again, being at the truck championships, They don't have you go through that part of it. But little things like that, such as truck comes out of shop to put a pair of pliers by your fifth wheel, and they'll leave them there. Uh, your truck comes out of my shop now. When my truck comes out of shop, I go over it with a fine tooth comb, because the mechanics tend to forget stuff like nuts and tools and stuff on your bumper and stuff. I've had that many times where it's come out of the shop. So at the championships, when they do stuff like that, as a driver, you tend to pick up and you learn from that. It's like, when's the last time I looked at this part of the truck or this part of the trailer? When's the last time that I did certain things like that? And that's where it's a learning curve. And like I said, once you do it the very first year, you get addicted to it, because wherever you place, you know all the mistakes you made. So you want to go back next year, because now you know you missed this last year. I'm not missing this year. And you just want to try and improve yourself.
Yeah. And there's also something we haven't talked about here is there's a written portion of the competition as well.
Yeah, there's like 50 questions on there. If you don't study, you're not going to get 100%. That's a fact. You got to restudy it. For us LCVs, there's questions on there that's a little unique compared to highway, just one truck, one trailer guys. Our tests are a little bit different, but it's questions that you should know. And the nice part about it is, because you study it, you know more than the average driver. So you're smarter than the average driver after you've done the competition, because you're studying details, measurements, numbers, PSI pressures, and all types of different things that an average driver he never thinks about, he never knows, because he's never been taught it, never had to know this stuff. At the truck driving championships, you better know this stuff, or else you're going to just do terrible on your written exam, because there's a lot of questions there. As simple as they are, drivers should know it. But that's not trained at drivers. Drivers don't learn this from driving school. They learn the basics. And like I said, the more that you're driving on the road, you forget a lot of this stuff. So at the championships, it refreshes you every year, because you have to restudy. You have to make sure that when you do that written test, you got to be on the ball with it. Because once again, like I said, in the competition, it's just not one portion of it. It's 3 or 4 portions that if you don't ace them, you're not going to land in that upper top 3 category at all. So.
Yeah. What would you say to those who haven't competed yet but are thinking of it?
You know what? Go to your company. I mean, first of all, companies, if you know you got good drivers out there, support them. Sign them up for this stuff. I mean, a lot of drivers don't want to pull money out of their own pockets. Companies can do this stuff. You know, it's not a big deal to companies. I mean, a lot of it can be tax. I know people keep bothering me here.
Yeah.
But the thing
A
is,
lot
though,
of it can be what?
people keep bothering me on my phone here.
Yeah.
Thing is, though, is if a company knows you have good drivers working for you, support them. Like, ask them if they want to go into it. I mean, it's not just a day with other drivers. It's a meal for the driver and his wife. It's a meal out. It's a great day for everybody. So companies, like I said, a lot of drivers don't want to pull money out of their own pocket. I mean, we don't get paid enough as it is. We're truck drivers. We're always underpaid. But the reality is the more companies will sponsor drivers, I'm sure we can get more drivers into the competitions. And as for drivers, they're thinking about going into it. You know what? If you know you're that good and you have the attitude where, yeah, I can handle that, I can do that, come into the competition, because you're going to be into a whole different world of truck driving. It's not as easy as it looks. Sometimes we will practice before the competition. Some of us will set up little makeshift practice areas in our yard, and we'll be doing backing up serpentines, and other drivers will watch us as we're doing this, and they will look at us, oh, that's easy, and they will try it. And after about second or third term, they will do it. But then we walk up to them and say, you see this little line in the ground here that we kind of used our foot and made a line in the gravel? I said, you can't move your front end past there because you failed the first turn you did. So then they try it when they see how small the track actually is. And then sometimes they get frustrated and they drive away because we make it look easy because we've been doing it for year after year. But for a driver on the track, everything is placed out. The ropes are down, the pylons are up. You know, when you're just kind of practicing in the yard, it's kind of like take a stick, run it through the gravel, and that's our barrier line. So a lot of drivers don't realize that. Because there's been a few drivers over the years that said, oh, that's easy, I can do that. And then once they do it, it's like, okay, you failed here, and you failed here because you can't put your front end over here. It's a wake-up call. And they usually get a little peed off and drive away. And it's like, come join the rodeo. Come join it. Like I said, it's when the track is there and everything's laid out, you can see where all your lines are. When you just kind of practice getting into your yard, you don't have the proper measurements, you don't have the proper lining. I mean, you're just best guessing it for the most part. But yeah, like I said, any driver that wants to come into it because it's gonna like I said, it's not driver against driver, who's the best, who's the that. A lot of the competition, basically, it's skill, but it's also nerves, and it's a lot of luck. Like I said, one obstacle, if you don't line up for it properly right off the very start, the odds of you making that obstacle just went down 150% already because now you're out of rack. And like I said, when you do it very first time, you're nervous. But a lot of us senior guys, we will give first time guys advice on how to do stuff. But putting trailers into tight spots when you're in the general public or at customers, that's one thing. When you're trying to put it into a tight spot that only gives you inches, not feet, inches to spare, and you have other drivers and other officers watching you because they're usually the judges and they're usually watching all the boundaries. When you got all these people watching you, it's a whole different ballgame. It's not like you're on your own. I mean, we all pat ourselves on the back at loading docks. Say, oh, I got in there easy. We can all put a trailer in the loading dock if there's two trailers in between where you got to go. You take those trailers out of there and you have no lines in the ground. Most drivers can't back it up to the loading dock straight. Why? Because there's no reference points anymore that he's used to. And that's what the competition is like. They have reference points, but they're not trailers. They're just little pylons. So it makes it interesting.
So I'd like to finish off with one question here. What is the best thing about the trucking industry?
The camaraderie of drivers. I mean, best thing about the trucking industry, you know what? If you didn't go to college for your whole life, it is a good paying job, depending upon where you're going. As for you're not in an office. When you're in that driver's seat, you're the boss. It doesn't matter if you work for a company or not. If it's not your truck, you're driving a company truck. It doesn't matter. When you're in that driver's seat, you're the boss. Every stop you do, every decision you make, you're 100% at that control. Some of us that have been doing it forever, you have your good days, you have your bad days. But to sit in the office all day long and stare at nothing like my wife does. And then I come home early and she says, why are you home? I said, the highways are bad. She doesn't understand that aspect of it. She's looking out her window. Oh, it's a beautiful sunny day out here. Well, 2 hours down the road, it's like a hurricane, but they don't see that. So, I mean, the best part about driving is, like I said, you're not committed to an office. When the weather cooperates, you enjoy it. It's decent paying. You can support your family on it. I mean, I've raised 3 kids on it already. And now I have a lot of toys. Still got to keep paying for it, but a lot of
Yeah.
toys out of the deal. But as for trucking, is it the way it used to be? No. It's not. When I started CBs, everyone had CBs. Everyone communicated. Uh, there are a lot more drivers. If you broke down, you'd have like 5 drivers there able to stop. They would help you. It's a little different in that aspect of it. But on the other hand, with all the technology now, truck driving is easier now than it's ever been. You have GPS to find your customers. You can look at photos of where their loading docks are. You can communicate with your family 24 hours a day now, just like we're doing right now with this interview. When I started, they never had cell phones. You had payphones. You called home once a week if you were lucky,
Yeah.
just to see if your wife was still there,
Yeah.
waiting for her, hopefully. But now, like I said, that the industry now with all the technology in it, it's safer with the technology. The communication with your family is not like it used to be. Now you can talk to them at any time. Um, so it's a lot better than it used to be. The only downside is some of the attitudes are a little different than they used to be. And that's why we do the truck driving championships. That's why we do all these promotions and that for truck drivers to inform them on how important it is to make the right decisions. And when drivers get together, they get to talk about the good and bad stuff. When I do my PDIC courses, I'd have 30 drivers in a room, all with 1 year experience. Some have 30 years experience. And in that classroom time, us, the older generation, would help the younger generation and tell them what their mistakes were or what accident they had, what they would have did different. And they all learn off each other. And that's what the industry needs is the old generation. We're starting to disappear now. Uh, we have to try and teach the younger generation of truck driving now that don't get pushed around. When you're behind that wheel, you're the ultimate boss. And a lot of drivers now are getting pushed around. Uh, our company doesn't do it, and I know there's a lot of companies that don't do it. Uh, but when you're new in the industry and you don't want to get fired from it, you tend to do stuff that normally you would never do on your own because you get pushed a little bit. And that's where us older generation, we need to talk to the younger generation. And the more events we have, like the truck driving championships, that we can see these drivers and talk to them and be one-on-one with them, it just goes a long way when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, that's an amazing way to wrap it up. I think you covered it all really well there.
Perfect.
I feel the same way. It's up to us as veteran drivers to pass on to the younger generation the
Yep.
values that we need to keep in trucking, and that's on us. You know, we can't just complain about younger drivers or newer drivers. We need to do what many of the older generation over us did for us. At least that's how I experienced it. Many of the senior drivers, and I would screw up, you know, that kind of take me aside and, you know,
Yep.
and the language was pretty salty and pretty blunt and to the point, but they helped, and I think that's our job these days is to help bring that across. And to me, that yeah, I like what you said there that the truck driving championships is part of this to help pass it on. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for all the work you've done, and for it's always fun seeing you and seeing the other people in the competition. So hopefully we can get more people involved, and look forward to seeing you again this year.
I appreciate that. I'm already been thinking about it for the last one. But you think about it all winter long for waiting
Yeah.
for it to come up because you know what mistake you made, and it's like, oh, I just want to go back and do it again.
As soon as you're done the course, you're like, can I do that again?
Well, then
Yeah.
you're sitting there saying, okay, did that guy hit anything? Did I hit anything? because when you're in your course, you're not allowed to see the other drivers do it.
Yeah.
So you don't know how well they did. It's always good if you're the first one to do the course, because then you get to watch everybody else.
Yeah.
But if you're the last one to do the course, you don't know how everyone did. So it's like one little mistake you made, you don't know if that's going to make or break you now. I mean, it's depends what kind of mistakes they made, but you don't know that. So it does get interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Thank you very much.
No problem. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening along and for liking and sharing and writing all the reviews I've been getting. It's been great. So that was a great interview. Let's take the words to heart and let that enthusiasm that he has come into your life wherever you are. And have a great day. We are going to see you again soon with another episode of Crazy Canuck Trucking. Have a great day.